Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video we're going to be talking about the best cosmic champions in the game in my opinion. Now again, a very quick disclaimer, and I do have to try to get through this video a little bit quicker than normal, so maybe a bit of context will be lost. But basically this list reflects a mixture of current game relevance and thoughts, as well as my personal opinion. It is slanted towards AW and Battlegrounds as the competitive game modes, because those are the game modes that effectively decide the game's meta. I have long said that a ton of champions are great for questing and all that stuff, but not all the champions are equal when it comes to the matches where losing matters. Alliance War and Battlegrounds are the two game modes where you're not guaranteed to win eventually. You lose a war, that's it. The war is lost. There's no do-over. There are revives, but the damage is done effectively in Alliance War. And in Battlegrounds, if you lose a match, you lose a match. You lose the points or your progression on the victory track. So those are the PvP game modes that in MCOC do decide the metas, and also largely decide which champions end up getting the Catalyst, the 6 stones, the Awakening Gems, and the attention from the players. Because in vast majority of the cases, those are the same champions that perform the best in the quest to begin with. And lastly, quests are hyper-specific, where one random champion is all of a sudden going to be the best champion for like 1 or 2 lanes and then never going to be seen again. Additionally, there's not a single piece of content in the game that you have to use like the highest progression champions. Like, you do not need a rank 4 for any piece of content in the game at all. You can get by with rank 2s, rank 3s, and ascended 6 stars if you really want to, and you're going to be fine. But the place where your relative power level matters the most is the competitive game mode, because you're going up against the relative power levels of the opponent. So if the opponent has higher ranked champions specifically, you are making yourself a disadvantage if you haven't ranked up those meta champions. Anyways, all that said, this is the old Cosmic Top 10, where Serpent was at top, Venom was the second best, which was a bit controversial at the time, but since Venom definitely has declined in my opinion, Null, Maestro, Medusa, Scream, Hyperion, No Walks, and Adam Warlock. And Cosmic Class effectively has had quite a bit of a glow up recently. They're definitely doing a lot better than they were a year ago or 6 months ago, and there are quite a few factors to that. So let's get straight to it. What has helped Cosmic Class obviously is the release of Galen as a 7-star, Carolina getting added, and then we also have Phoenix rework, even though it's not like the most significant, but we got Thanos for the Cosmics as well. So there's quite a bit of change there for sure. There are quite a few champions that do not make the top 10 list, which I think could potentially have an argument for being towards the bottom of top 10. And I will specifically talk about spot number 10 there. But Adam Warlock doesn't make it, in my opinion. I still think he's a solid champion. I still think he's, not everybody's cup of tea. Some people love him, some people don't care for him at all. But that's where he stands right now. Obviously, CGR, Hulkling, and Hercules are ineligible for these lists because they do not exist as 7 stars. And I did not make a mistake. I did make a mistake. I'm going to have to change my spot top 10 pick, but I will fix that mistake in a second. So Nova, I think, was as close to a top 10 as he could have gotten, because I actually did add him into the top 10 list initially, but I'm making an executive decision on the fly. He's not in the top 10 anymore, but I do think he's quite close. I do think Superior Iron Man is also a very solid champion that doesn't quite make it. Terax definitely has quite a bit of use in game as well. Phoenix rework, I think, is very close to top 10. Maybe she would have gotten in top 10 had she had a better chance to show herself, but as of right now, we have seen very little of her. And Vox is another one. Vox has always been one of those champions, I think, kind of teetering on the edge. At some times he's doing better, at sometimes he's doing poorly, but you can't really make a great case for him. So instead of Nova as the 10th spot in the Cosmic Class, I am going to give it to Maestro. Completely fell out of my head. But yeah, I do think Maestro has lost a ton of defensive value. The problem with Maestro is that he's catching the strays from Serpent, basically, because since the release of Serpent and him being like an absolute dominant defender in the game, Obviously, there are, more Mystic champions that have gained popularity, more Mystic champions designed to absolutely destroy Serpent. And the issue is that in a vast majority of the cases, Maestro also kind of gets wrecked by them. And that is a problem, obviously, because that actively hinders him, because every person's carrying more counters to Maestro. So that's one thing. The second thing is, obviously, there are more champions who can deal with Maestro than there are who can deal with Serpent. For instance, somebody like Onslaught is very capable of destroying Maestro, not as great against Serpent. Somebody like Juggernaut can absolutely rinse that fight in like 30-40 seconds if the fight goes well, and you can't do that against Serpent, so on and so forth. So Maestro is kind of Serpent light in an essence. Maestro was prototype to Serpent-esque defenders, I guess you would say. And he has taken, quite a bit of damage because of that. On the bright side, though, I do think with the release of 7-star Fam and a few more tech champions, his offensive kind of viability has increased slightly. I do think people do underestimate him and look at him as only a defender when he, in fact, is not. He is, somewhat serviceable offensive champion as well. But this is where I think he ranks effectively. I do not think it would be great to put him any higher because, again, his defensive value has definitely gone down. And his offensive value isn't quite enough to kind of justify placing him higher. There are great elements in his kit, though, like a specific set of immunities, Poison, Shock, and Incinerate. That is quite great. And also his access to Pierce is definitely quite useful. And, him being just quite tanky and having a very simple rotation is definitely helpful. Right. All that put aside, let's move on to spot number 9. And spot number 9 is Venom. Venom definitely has taken a backseat. Like, for the longest time, Venom was my most wanted champion in the game because it just seemed that everywhere I go, everyone was using Venom. And since I got Venom, that definitely has not been longer the case. Venom is more, again, like pick your timing type champion. He is great for specific things, but as far as Cosmic champions go, he's not the best at actually countering the tech champions, which is like his biggest weakness. When you do bring your Cosmic champions, you'd expect them to be able to crush like Zola, or you'd expect them to be able to crush Sentinels and Red Skulls, and he just doesn't do quite well there. But he does have a very solid set of matchups outside of tech class typically. That would involve, for instance, Yelena. He's somewhat competent counter to Yelena, which is great. Spider-Woman is gaining a lot of defensive significance, and he is great against Spider-Woman. He's a very serviceable Nick Fury counter as well, and therefore it is a fairly unique case where he is a Cosmic champion and kind of fits most of the Cosmic champion traits and weaknesses, like reliance on the buffs and so on, but he is not necessarily the best tech counter. So with that, and with the increased difficulty in the tech defenders, I do think his role in the game has definitely diminished. That is not to say that, again, there aren't kind of like countering factors where he still is serviceable, and again, given particular sets of nodes, he definitely is shining there. Overall in the game, I do think it is incredibly significant to have a Venom because he has, amazing abilities to counter the Spider class with completely shutting down their evades. His nuke potential is quite great, and he's probably have like one of the best, not the best interaction with Specific Relic, which absolutely supercharged him and effectively was what gave him second life in the game. That Venom Relic 6-star duped, and he's going to be doing absolute magic in a ton of fights. The downside is also that he is kind of like an RNG dependent champion, but again, that's offset with him being like one of the most straightforward champions to use in the game. So I think he definitely still has a lot of value. I do think he's great and important to have, but his role is diminishing. Next up, we're going to get Scream, and Scream again has had kind of up and down, and Scream has a similar problem than Venom does in some of the cases where, ironically, some of the hottest tech defenders is just something that Scream can't really do too well because of the reliance on the bleed and armor breaks and just how many champions are immune to it. And if you can't, armor break tech champions, that is going to be a significant problem for Scream. Despite of that, she's still managing to find ways to be useful. One of the bigger issues with her, though, is that she's a nukey not particularly versatile champion if she's unduped. Her dupe is what gives her a lot of value, but also it's not just a dupe. You really want her to be at those SIG 200, which is a very significant investment. And currently in the game, Scream hasn't been like around, in my opinion, for that long of a time for too many people to have feasibly taking the plunge and taking her to SIG 200, because they would have to SIG her up from the very bottom. And ironically, right now, I see a lot of Celestial players using a 6-star Scream over their 7-star versions just because that is easier to get to SIG 200, which is one of the things that kind of like explains the problem here. If 6 stones were more available, or if Scream and copies of Scream were made more available somehow in one way or another, that would drastically improve her viability in the game, because I think more people would be willing or able to take her to SIG 200 without like such a massive 6-stone investment. That obviously goes for a ton of champions, but when it comes to, again, what you would want to use Scream for, it is very, very significant as well. And again, that 6-star over a 7-star Scream situation is not just in current Battlegrounds metas. I know that my Battle Group's officers also were looking for people who have 6-star SIG 200 Screams and assigning those instead of the 7-star ones. But overall, I think she is a fantastic champion, a great addition to the game. I think she's also very, very cool to play, and quite an impressive champion. Again, I think she's a bit of a victim of bad circumstance, again, of the nature how Kabam started designing some of the latest tech defenders, and that definitely didn't help her too much. But she does have, like, an upside that's similar to Venom's, like, where she does have a wide, varied set of matchups outside of tech class that she does great, as well as some of the tech champions like Red Skull, for instance. So there you go. I do think Scream at the moment is spot number 8 in Cosmic class. Moving on, spot number 7, Medusa. Because Medusa effectively is very similar to Scream. They are like, when it comes to everything and anything, they're kind of like cousins. Because Medusa is utilizing arm breaks and bleeds in a different way, but so is Scream, arm breaks and bleeds. Medusa is obviously a Cosmic champion, therefore reliant on, buffs and fury buffs and whatnot. And so is Scream reliant on ton of buffs as a Cosmic champion. Both of them have access to evade prevention in specific cases. Obviously, Medusa's is kind of better with the true accuracy, and it also bypasses auto block. Both of them have long-lasting limitation effects against armor ups, where Scream with the SIG ability is reducing armor up ability accuracy, and Medusa does it kind of with armor shatter. And both of them even have kind of similar level 1, level 2 rotations, where level 2 is like the big cash out special attack. So again, I do think Medusa and Scream is very similar champions. So why do I prefer Medusa? Well, there are several reasons. Number one, I do think Medusa has better defensive value, because Medusa is not somebody we would describe as like an amazingly hard defender in a vanilla set of circumstances. Like if you ever meet a Medusa in arena, it's not a problem, right? It becomes a problem under the specific set of nodes when that auto block is going haywire, when she gets extra combat power rate, when there are extra buffs appearing, when you can't parry heavy her. All of those are things that are making Medusa significantly harder to deal with. So on more than a few occasions, she's becoming a very, very serviceable defender. And even in a generic meta, she's also definitely a defender that you can kind of catch opponent off guard with as well. And also, I think Medusa is more straightforward to use. So I do think Medusa is slightly better than Scream currently. I think that stuff can change, as much of these things do in this game. But I personally value Medusa just a notch above Scream. Right. Other than that, fantastic addition to the game, and great rework for a champion. Very simple, very kind of like focused and effective, in my opinion. Right. Let us move on. And that's Galen. Spot number 6. I'm giving to Galen. And Galen used to be one of the big 4 Cosmics, right? And there was a time in game when he was absolutely dominant. And now he's just freshly come out as a 7-star. But, again, more and more people do feel like he has kind of lost his place. At the same time, there are encouraging signs for Galen, and then there are some discouraging signs for Galen. Because Kabam, number 1, has introduced way more safeguard defenders. And champions is like some sort of mythical damage caps where you can't do more than X amount of damage to them in a single go. And a lot of that obviously significantly affects Galen, because previously one of his biggest claims to fame effectively was that there was just about nobody immune to Galen's damage. As long as you could exist in a fight, you could do your harvest damage, and that was good enough. Now that situation is changing. Not to mention the fact that nature of defenders have changed, and they are more difficult to fight with a champion like Galen without having access to specific type of abilities, and he's not the best RPG counter to a bunch of stuff. Like, for instance, again, Arnim getting created and completely capping his harvest damage whilst being one of the top tech defenders. That is a problem. That is an issue for him. And whether he will eventually regain his, let's say, podium or top 4, top 5 spot, I think it remains to be seen. I think there are good signs, like the fact that he's very serviceable against Yelena, for instance. I think that is great. There are still champions that he might not be the best against, but that are very relevant, and he would do just fine. Like Onslaught, for instance, it's doable fight. Like in specific situations, he can do Photon, and again, there are new edge defenders that he's capable of doing, but increasingly more so, there are more and more and more that he can't, that we see all the time in the game. So this is a fairly kind of cautious position on Galen. It will be definitely interesting to see this list again down 6 months down the line, and see exactly where he has landed. But all the best to the champion. We wanted him as a 7-star for a very long time. He was part of the big Cosmic 4 that seemingly got completely abandoned by Kabam, with CGR and Hercules and Halfling. In my opinion, he is kind of the lesser one of those, but again, situationally, he's absolutely the most powerful one. Like, metas like this. Metas where power burn on every hit whilst the opponent has armor up, he gets supercharged, and he is one of the most dangerous champions. So again, regardless of what exactly is going to happen to his meta relevance, I think a champion like Galen will always have a place in a game, because there are some set of things that he does better than anybody. There's a very useful set of immunities, access to an insane amount of buffs, access to Incinerate, and obviously the harvest damage still being a very unique form of damage. And yeah, definitely want to see how well he does in the upcoming month. But now we need to move on to spot number 5. And spot number 5, it's kind of a similar position, a champion that I'm ranking with not that much evidence based on. Now, I do not have highly ranked Kolind. I think I do have a 5-star that I have played around with, and I do know for a fact she is a very good champion. She does have a crazy amount of power gain, and she can drop a very significant amount of damage in kind of a unique way, and that glancing ability is absolutely OP. So I do expect Kolind to actually potentially make it higher in the list, but I'm not willing to give her a higher spot right now, because she hasn't actually had the accolades, and she hasn't necessarily, have some sort of test of time proof on her name. I do not think she has much defensive relevance at all, much like many of the champions we discussed here before. But Kolind definitely currently seems to be, in my opinion, the best offensive Cosmic champion. And that could have something to do with the fact that she is the newest one that Kabam has made, but I do think that Kolind is the best equipped to deal with the new age threats of the tech class. And again, we can easily find that when we are looking at the tech champions, especially the more recent ones from 2025 or 2024. She would be able to like nuke any of these defenders, and many others, like Sentinel that has gotten buffed, Zola, she gets through. Arcade, she would absolutely destroy. No, wait, would she destroy Arcade? I actually don't know about that. But yeah, and also the fact that she does very, very well outside of her class because of nature, how she gets. In my opinion, it's kind of like a new age Hyperion, because again, you don't have to hit the opponent much in order to be able to drop your projectile special attacks. In her case, those can also be unblockable, and she is different. Again, she does kind of seem like new age Hyperion in a way. How well exactly she's going to carry on doing, again, that does remain to be seen, but I personally do have very high hopes for her. Her and Nico currently are probably my... Well, Savannah's actually doing a bang-up job with the new champions recently, but I definitely do want Nico, which I consider to be one of the better Mystic champions. And I definitely want Carolina as well, because she's impressive. She's scary to face off against. She counters a ton of relevant meta champions. She's fast. She has the damage. I do believe she has like flexibility of the playstyle. That glancing is massive thing for her, because she can just cut down so many abilities and tank so many specials. So yeah, we'll see exactly how well she's going to be doing though. So this, again, similar to Galen's placement right now, is not necessarily the most fact-driven placement. This is more so as my hunch and personal evaluation, because there is not a great amount of sample size yet for her. Alright, let's move on to spot number 4, and Null. Null is just getting more popular. There's no way to put it. Null is becoming more and more meta-relevant. He is still maintaining a defensive significance as a stall option that's resistant to several forms of damage that typically would get employed against him. Great synergy with inequity. He reduces your combat power rate, thus making, several different champion loops more tricky. You do always want to be careful of the reverse controls, so on and so forth. So there is also inherent defensive value to Null, which is great. And then, again, offensively, he's also kind of managing to maintain his relevance. And again, depending on the nodes and depending on the metas, he's making it work. For a while, I think he had kind of disappeared from the metagame, but unquestionably he has made a comeback. And I'm very happy for the guy. Genuinely am. I think he's a very cool character. Also, the fact that he is undeniably a ramp-up character that still manages to be relevant with effectively, portion of his damage, just speaks volumes of how effective he can be in the longer form content. And people having that access ready on the go is awesome. I do love his auto regen nullification there, because while corruption is active, the opponent has 10 to 50%, up to 50% health or less. When they would get a regeneration effect, replace that with degen. That is just such a mean null type of ability. But anyways, without getting off track again, I do think he's a very well-established champion that is just at the moment aging gracefully and is becoming more and more relevant by the day. Again, he's definitely one of those champions that I want to rank up myself as well. My biggest issue with Null is that I just can't seem to get any SIGs on him, because I never pull him, and mine is SIG 20, and if I was to rank him, that would require a very significant SIG stone investment, which currently in the game is a very big problem. But he is for sure on the list of champions I want to get working on in nearby future. And that leaves us with the big 3. And the big 3, well, number 1, again, before anything else, I must say that I hate how these paywall champions are now appearing in the top 10 lists, because it sucks, because again, vast majority of the people do not have an access to Dark Phoenix. And it's a very shitty way to run the game, in my opinion. But I do think she is effectively the 3rd best cosmic champion in the game right now. We're going to start obviously with her defense, because that's what she is known for. And defensively, she's just 2025 version of Electro. Effectively, unless you have an ideal counter, unless you have like one of very few select ideal counters to her, you'll be taking damage. Not that it's super hard to fight her, it really isn't. Push her to level 2s unless you have access to slow. Take your chip damage or learn how to dex her level 2, that's fine. Then be super aggressive afterwards to minimize the no flame damage. And, you rinse and repeat, and then you try to deal with the safeguard and everything else, and it still takes time to kill her, but it's a fairly straightforward fight. It's just that, yeah, you're going to be taking damage along the way, and damage obviously can easily get out of hand, and things can happen, and If she starts spamming level 1s, then the fight goes wrong very, very fast. That is the worst thing that can happen in the fight typically. And then in the end, her immortality can get you, the unblockable special attack while she's immortal can get you, and it's just very uncomfortable, unpleasant type of experience. Obviously, we do have counters to her, and in that sense, again, she's kind of like a 2 more Electro, where you don't have the best of counter, you will take damage regardless how good you play. And if you do have a counter to her, very, very simple to destroy in most cases, like with Nico or with Hoods or even with Diablo and so forth. All that said, she's going to be a defensive staple in the game for a very long time, without question. You just know she will be. Additionally, she's more than just a defender, which is kind of her saving grace, because if she had just that, and if she was as useless as Enchantress is on attack, she would be significantly lower rated. Because, again, if opponent does draft a counter to her, then she's useless. She can go down very fast and she'll do absolutely nothing, and she's very easy fight. But the great thing is that you can use her offensively quite well, especially against kind of like more dedicated tech defenders, but in a handful of other situations also. Because she's fairly straightforward to play. You just drop like a couple of level 1s, which is easier to do thanks to power gain, and get your level 2, and you know she's going to be getting through the fight with her Null Flames at a very reasonable pace. She does have Pulverize on her heavy attacks, which does come in handy as well, so allowing you quicker ramp up and extra damage. And yeah, the fact that she uses Null Flames and hardly anybody's immune or resistant Null Flames helps her greatly. The greatest thing about Dark Phoenix, and I have tested out myself though, is in obviously longer type fights, which isn't giving champions that much of an extra added value, but it's still a nice, neat little thing to do. If you do have Dark Phoenix, bring her in Labyrinth of Legends and try messing around with her level 1, level 2, level 3 rotations, getting those permanent Null Flames on, and then, you know, get knocked out at the end of the fight on purpose just to see that regen go crazy and you regen back to 100% health before you finish the fight. It's a very fun experience too. But yeah, she definitely has a ton of value. I do believe she will remain significant for a long time. And that kind of sucks unless Kabam makes her available in some half-decent way to a larger amount of players. Moving on, Thanos, I think there's always a debate, Deathless Thanos or Serpent. I still personally give an inch of an advantage to Serpent, and I'll explain why, but I do think both of them, I do think Deathless Thanos and Serpent are both still top 5 champions in the game without question. And here's how they kind of differentiate. Thanos is a faster attacker, and for content like Battlegrounds, he's the better attacker. Because, again, you can do many things faster. Overall in game, I actually kind of prefer Serpent as an attacker because of his true focus, the way he gains power, and his rotation and playstyle being just easier, simpler to manage without you needing to take block hits or watch timers and so on and so forth without worrying about things expiring. So offensively, I overall prefer Serpent, but it's undeniable that for like Battlegrounds and questing scenarios, Thanos is the better defender. Thanos is, however, also a fairly vanilla defender, where just about anybody can kill him. It's going to take time, though. And that is good enough, often, for a defender. Serpent, obviously, is kind of famously the nastiest defender in the game. He still is by far the most overtuned defender in the game. And the fact that, you know, Kabam has made 10 new counters to him since they released him doesn't change the fact that half of those counters suck, half of them are only effective under specific metas and conditions, and most of them still take a very significant amount of time to kill Serpent, which is in general typically more than enough to win you around anyways, because of his resistances and everybody else. It's just crazy how overtuned he is. Like, generally, Serpent is such an overtuned champion where they threw everything at him for defensive purposes that they accidentally made an amazing offensive champion too. Thanos is different, because I think Thanos is very deliberately built to be kind of like great for both one or the other thing. Overall, though, absolutely, I do love both of the champions. I do think there's not that much of a difference in value between one and the other. I do think, again, if it's a rank up dilemma, don't. Rank up one, then another, and that's it. You will want to rank up both of them. If you do not have all the Deathless champions, it is worth to chase them to get access to Thanos, because again, there is a ton packed in his kit, and it is relevant, and it works. Simple as that. So one of the best champions in the game, for sure. He would be at top, I think, just about any other class list. Like, if Thanos was tech with these abilities, he would be the top tech. If Thanos was Mystic with these abilities, he would probably top the Mystic list. If Thanos would be, skill, he'd probably top the skill list. That's where I'm at right now. Can't top the cosmic list. And, yeah. What else do you guys want me to say? The man's a menace. Has access to a ton of buffs, ton of furies, ton of hit damage. Has access to very significant armor break and armor shatter, which has its own utility. Has access to easy knockdowns with his passive stun chain on the heavy attack. Has access to easy openings and intercepts with his counter punch. Has access to dot with his level 2. And obviously there are protections and abilities to bypass evade and abilities to bypass miss. Even as I describe the champion, you just know for a fact he has to be good at Powerhouse. And then defensively, again, you cannot ever be overly aggressive against him. There are the protections that effectively will slow you down quite a bit. He does have a very big health pool, and he is, again, a champion that will punish you fairly aggressively. So that's Thanos. And again, Serpent, I already kind of started explaining Serpent here, but Serpent's fairly easy to explain. Kabam wanted to make the most unfair, the most bullshit, the most unbalanced defender, and they did. Accidentally, those abilities also made a very good offensive champion. And again, the fact that Serpent was called balanced and was untouched, I think is obviously an extreme hypocrisy. At the same time, you could kind of view it as a miracle of God, because he just isn't balanced in any way, shape, form, or fashion when you put him next to just about any champion in the game. The sheer amount of text and the abilities and the potency of those abilities is insane. The way he has multiple ways how to distribute his damage. Again, he has power gains, he has true focus, completely allowing him to bypass, miss, and evade his unblockable special attacks. He has access to Pierce, he has resistances, he has Fury, and so on and so forth. And the set of immunities, it's just a ridiculous champion. And I actually hate that. Like, I think this kind of needs to be another video in itself. But Kabam effectively has started to make boss fight ability kits into the regular champions, right? And it does not synergize well with the way they are creating the game. And previously, Kabam made defenders that had fairly set amount of defensive abilities. Nothing too crazy, but you kind of knew what you have to do against those champions. And then they used to make those fights hard with nodes. Now they have put all those nodes and added into the champion's defensive kits, making effectively a noded mini boss or boss fight walking around in arena, for example. And then they put extra nodes on top of it without realizing the compounding effects. Without realizing that they make champions like Enchantress, for instance, in their invade power gainy meta, where she's borderline impossible to kill with, 99.9% of the champions in the game. And that's going to happen more often, and Serpent's definitely an example of that. Like, even though we do have so many counters to Serpent in the game right now, there are still metas and situations where just about nothing works. And where every option is quite shit. And again, that also speaks obviously to the relevance and power of Serpent. It is a ridiculous overtuned champion. with the existence of Serpent as defender, I want to hear not a single word about Kate being offensively OP and too strong to be released as 7-star. Game not being ready for Hulkling. When they blue balled us in the Heart of Fire event, Serpent is the biggest argument to that, oh, Hulkling is too strong to be released. The game isn't ready for Hulkling. Like, bitch, if Serpent can exist and destroy every single champion on defense, then Hulkling can exist on attack. Absolutely, the game's ready for 7-star Hulkling. No question about it. If champions like Serpent are made and allowed to exist. And again, yes, we do have counters to Serpent now. But have you noticed that, again, regardless of how many counters are, they're only as effective if you can get to them. That's the first thing. Second thing is, even if you do have the counters to Serpent, you know, you might not have a great time fighting him. And, yeah, I do think Serpent's still the best Cosmic Champion. I think Thanos is in second place. So, starting this up. Ta-da-da-da, new top 10. I'm going to replace that. Nova was meant to be in the 10th spot. I'm going to put Maestro there, though. So, there we go. We got Serpent, Thanos, Dark Phoenix, Null, Kolind, Dean, Galen, Medusa, Scream, Venom, and Maestro. Alright, that's it. And I will catch you guys soon. Bye-bye. Hello there, guys, and welcome back to the channel. So, we have all the information about